internet issues all morning. So, and just in case I go away, there'll be somebody else that probably can get on and wait for me to get back on. So I just wanted to give you that heads up before we get started. Also, we are going to be discussing action items today. So if you don't use action items, you don't need to get in here, but if you want to hear about them, that's what we'll be discussing. We're going to see how to enter action items, but we're also going to look at the setup side and how you can add things to that also. So we'll be going over that. We are going to be recording this session, which I believe the recording has just started. And so you are able to access that recording on our YouTube channel. If you we will be putting that YouTube channel in our chat at the end of this. And then also, if you don't remember what the channel is, you can go to YouTube and look up DEKRA Management Systems, and it'll allow you to see all of our recordings that we've had over the years. And you can look at it on there. Also, we are going to mute your phone lines. If you have questions, you can use the chat feature, which is, let me get my screen up so you can see it. Oops. Hang on just a second. The chat feature is actually located right up here at the top of the screen, this little bubble. If you click on that, you can put in a chat over here on the right-hand side, and we will get to those questions at the end of the session. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my other screens. So like I said, here's our agenda, how to enter action items. We're going to talk about the admin side on how to set things up for action items, and also the dashboards and action item list. Maybe just one moment. All right. So the first thing that we're going to look at is actually how to enter those action items into the system. So what I've done first is I've logged into my generic account here, and I've gone into observations, enter observations, and I would go in, start entering my observation like always. And as I come over and I'm putting in some of the exposures, if they're safe and at risk, once I click the at risk button, this little button over here on the right hand side is going to pop up, or these three will actually, and you can click on this one. This is going to be how you enter action item for an exposure. So this isn't, the exposure is head for personal protective equipment. This box pops up, so I'm going to click add action item. And at the top of the screen, you're going to see there is a select action item type. So you can select your type. We do have a lot of generic ones in here, but most of them will be using the barrier to safe performance. So you can click on that one if that's the one you're doing. And then as you scroll down the page, so once I clicked on that, some of the things may have disappeared or reappeared. So you can click on the location, the target date, areas, and then you can come in here and look at it and select the status. So is the action item open? Is there a priority level, high, low, or medium? And then as you scroll down the screen, you can put in a summary and then a description. So if I was going in to enter an action item for this one, let's just say I, was out in the field and I noticed somebody wasn't wearing their hard hat, and the action item would be the reason they weren't wearing it is because we're out of them and we need to reorder, and his had broke yesterday. So the employee's hard hat was broke. And you talk to him about that, and the description is we need to order hard hats. And then as you come down the screen, you can see there's a list of people who you can assign this corrective action. So if it was me, I'm going to just say I'm going to assign it to Albert Gordon because I want him to order those hard hats. It's also going to populate the exposure because we selected the one next to the exposure right here. So it already has 5.1, and mine was head is what the exposure is called. And then as we scroll down the screen, we have two options that you can turn on or off depending on what your company would like to do. So the first one is this hierarchy of control. And I want to show you kind of what that is exactly. So let me switch over to this screen real quick. So you can see here the hierarchy of control has 5 different selections that you can pick. One is elimination, which is a physical removal of hazard of the hazard and is the most effective hazard control. The second one is the substitution. So it would be involves replacing something that produces a hazard with something that does not produce a hazard or produces a lesser hazard. So it really doesn't like eliminate it. It's kind of like substituting it. Engineering controls, the third one is the most effective means of controlling hazards is engineered controls. These do not eliminate hazards, but they rather isolate the people from the hazards. And that helps with the capital cost of engineered controls. And they tend to be higher. Sorry, I've got my screenshot. Oops, sorry about that. Let me try that again. The capital cost of engineered controls tend to be higher than and less effective controls of hierarchy. So these are a little bit better. These just cost a little bit more. Administrative controls are going to be changes to the way the people work. For example, it would be a procedure change or an employee training, making sure they're doing their job the correct way instead of the way they were doing it. And then personal protective equipment would be PPEs, includes like gloves, clothing, respirators, hard hats, safety glasses, high visibility clothing, and safety footwear, and by using those hierarchy of control measures. So you can kind of see that there's a little table over here on the right hand side that you can use. Right. The second one that we have is actually SIF. So in the screenshot, let me go back over to it. You can see our severity for SIF is over here on the right hand side. SIF means serious injury fatality. If you're currently not using that at your company, then you can shut this off, but I wanted to make sure you guys knew it was in there so you can use it. You have the option of looking at this action item and deciding whether the severity is a SIF potential, or a non-SIF potential. So you can turn that on or off. If you don't know a whole lot about SIF, we do have a link, and I will send this PowerPoint out at the end of the session that you can click on, and it'll take you to our one of our sister companies, and I think it's OSR that has this, and they have a link in there which you can decide if you guys want to read through that, and then there's a thing that you can go on there and it'll actually calculate your SIF to tell you what your SIF potential is. So this is the link for that, and I will attach that to the emails that go back out to you guys. So the next thing down is the completion notes. So this is something I've, already started. So they put in the completion notes. So once you're done and you guys are going back in and filling these out and, trying to close them out or complete them, then you can come down here to the bottom, put in completion notes, and the data is completed right here, and then save. But I also want to point out a few things which we're going to talk about a little bit more on the admin side is custom forms. So we do have all this information up here you can look at, but if you guys have some things that you still want to track in action items that we don't have in this, these options up here, then you can build some custom forms and add those to the bottoms. And I just put a couple of them in here just for a quick example, and you can see they have drop downs that you can select. So that's an option for you. Also, right before I get off this page, I do want to point out that we do have an upload file button, which is located right here at the bottom of the page. So you can see that. So you can upload anything into here just by clicking it. So if you have a picture of the action item that you're looking at, you can go in, find that picture on your computer, click on it, hit open, and then it'll populate this and it'll be attached to this actual action item. So once I hit submit, it brings you back out to this screen, and I want to point out a couple other places that you can put out or put in action items. So we just went over this one right here on the right. The next one you can do is right up here at the top of the page. Now this is another place, it looks just like this one, minus it doesn't have the exposure populated into it. So I'm not going to click on it, but I want to explain what this one could be used for. So if you're going to click on this one, it would be an action item that you saw while you're out in the field that is somewhat related to the actual observation. So you'd want to use, this one to do that, but it's not really an exposure. You just saw something, you want to add an action item for it for this observation. This is where you would do that at, right up here. The third place you can put in an action item is at the top of the page and under action items, and it says create action item right here. So you can see that. And this would be just you could put in a generic one. Maybe you were out in the field doing an observation, you saw something that wasn't really related to the observation, like there was a light bulb out on the building and you noticed it and you want them to get that changed. You could put in a generic ad hoc action item by using this create action item button right up here at the top of the page. So that's pretty much how you enter action items into the system. I also, while I'm on this page, I'm going to go ahead and show you the action item list. So this is where you can go in and look at all the action items and their progress and where they're at. So I'm going to leave this page real quick. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And you can see here's a couple action items other people have put into the system. You can easily view them right over here on the left-hand side. You can put in a date range up here at the top. So maybe I only want to see this month's or last month's. I'd put in that date range. Then you have the option of putting in date created, the target date, or the date completed, depending on which one you want to search by over here on the left. And then as you scroll across the screen, you're going to see our filter buttons that we have on just about everything. You can click on that filter and decide which ones you want to see. So you can see I have a couple selected in there that I was looking at. And then if you want to save your filters so you can go back to that at a later date, you can come in here, put in the name of whatever you call this. Maybe it's action items for Kansas City only. And then I would filter out everybody's but Kansas City's in the org units. So there's Kansas City. We have 2 Kansas Cities in there. Then I'm going to click the Save as New Filter. So when I click that Save as New Filter, you're going to see that it changed it and put it right over here. So I still have the default option over here, but this is going to be my new one. So every time I come in here, those filters are always going to be the same for what I selected up here. You can easily change those filters. So if you want to add one or take one away by go ahead and clicking on whatever you want to see, hitting update current filter, and it would change that filter and save that way. So that's how this page works. Also down here at the bottom, you can see there's 3 dots right next to each one of the columns. That's going to allow you to sort ascending and descending. It's also going to allow you to select or unselect some of the columns that you don't need to see. So if you don't want to see the severity because you're looking at that, you can uncheck it. It'll take it out of the column so you don't have to see that. You can also export to Excel right here at the top of the screen. All right. With that being said, we are going to switch over to the admin side. Now, if you are not a super user or have administrative role level, you will not be able to see this, but you're more than welcome to sit in and listen for this little section, and then we'll talk about dashboards right after it. So I'm going to click on Feature Setup. So if you want to come in and build out like the types of action items you can have. We saw that at the beginning, at the very top, you could pick which type of action item you want to select. This is where you're going to go in and do that. So in here, as you click in the screen, you're going to see 4 items on the left-hand side. The first one we're going to look at is this action item button right here. So you click on this and these 3 types will show up. So I always start at the very top. We're going to start with types and we're going to click the Manage button. And then you're going to see any type that we already have in here. So these are already ones that we've built out in here. But if you want to create a new one, you would just click Create New Action Item Type. I'm actually going to go ahead and just select one that we already have so you can see how it looks when it's filled out. So as you come in the screen, if you were doing a brand new one, you would put the name of the action item type up here at the top of the page. And then as you go down the page, you can see here action item settings, status group, and priority group. This is going to make it more, you'll be able to understand this a little bit more when we get to the next section that we're going to look at. But if you remember right, on the action item or on the action item screen at the top, the status group was going to be open, close, or open, in progress, or complete. That's the 3 options that we have in there for our default. That's what this is. It's just selecting this to make sure those statuses are showing up at the top. The second one is the priority groups. That's going to be high, low, medium, urgent, whatever you have in there. And that's the same thing. You're just selecting which one you want to use. You can have multiples to choose from. We're going to look at how to set those up here in just a minute. Then the next 4 options down here are going to be kind of the settings that we have turned on. So we talked about the serious injury fatality. If you do not want to use that, I would just check it off so you don't have to see it. But you will notice underneath each one of these, you're going to see this require significant injury or fatality. If you want to require it to be filled out before they can save, you can check that box right there and that'll save it. The next one is going to be that enable hierarchy of control that we talked about. If you guys aren't using that or don't want to use that, you can uncheck that right here. This is going to be to not allow you to see that file upload at the bottom of the page. If you don't want them to upload anything to it, you can uncheck that one. And then you would also have the option of unchecking enable signees, which I don't know why you would do that, because you want to make sure somebody's assigned to those action items. But that's what those four are right there. The next thing down is the footer custom form. So we're going to talk about custom forms here in just a minute. And it'll make more sense. This is the options that were at the very bottom of the page that were extra that you guys are wanting to track that are currently not something that we're tracking. So if you want to do that, I'm going to show you how to set those up and you can pick that. So I've already done one, pre-populated it. So it says action item form in here. I selected that one. We do have a lot in here because we do a lot of custom forms for things in here, but that's the one I did. So I want to keep that in there. I did skip over one button up at the top right-hand corner, and that's the select version. So you do have the option of versioning this. So if you were coming along and you decided you don't want to use the hierarchy of control anymore, you can uncheck, or first you would want to hit create new version. Then you would uncheck the box that you don't want. And then when you save, it'll add a new version. So you'll see version 3 come in here if I was going to do that. If you want to inactivate this entire thing and you don't want to use the action items, you're more than happy to inactivate it down here at the bottom. All right, oops. I'm going to go back to the feature setup page where we started at with types. And we're going to go into those priority statuses that we talked about. So the first one we're going to look at is the priorities. And you can see up in the upper right-hand corner, you can build your own. You can have multiples in here. I'm going to go ahead and edit the one that's currently in here, which is action item priorities. And you can see that I have put the name in up at the top. Must not be spelled right. So you can put that in right there. And then as you come down the page, you can see there's a drop down and there's also a box that you can fill in. So this is for you to either use ones that you've deleted, which I deleted urgent this morning, so you can see where that's at. If I want to use that, I can just click that, hit add, and it'll add it down here to the bottom. If I didn't want to use that one anymore, you just hit the remove button and it'll populate it back up into here. The next one is if you're wanting to add one that is currently not in there, because you guys actually have different priority levels. So let's say extremely high is one that we want to add. I would click the add button and it'll add it down here to the bottom. So when you're done, you click save and that'll add that to the screen automatically. So that's how you do priority groups. We're going to go back to the feature setup page again. And we're going to click on statuses. And you can see again, here's the create new status button. Also over here on the left-hand side is the action item statuses that we've already added to them. So I'm going to go ahead and click and edit on one of those so you can see that. It looks just like the last page we looked at. So you would just add the name action item statuses or whatever you want to put in there. And then you would add which ones you want to use. So you can see we currently use as a default open, in progress, complete, but I have seen other people use some different ones in there also. Again, you'll have that option for the drop down, almost completed is in there for this one, or you can type in one if you wanted to add a new one to it also. That's how you do the statuses and the priorities. So with that, we're going to switch over to the custom forms section. So to get to that, we're going to come back to this admin feature setup page, same one we're on for action items, and we're going to come down to custom forms. Now this is where we build our custom forms for our entire site. So there's other custom forms that could possibly be in here, like such as your variables and your flags. That's what we call a custom form. So they could be located in here. But what we're going to do is build out the action item form that we want to use. So I always start at the very top and you start with data sources. I am going to switch over to my PowerPoint because I have this already in here and I'm going to send this out so you guys have it also because I think it'll be easier to follow along in here a little bit. Okay, So how you enter a custom form is you're going to come into admin feature setup, like I said, custom form, and you're going to click data source, and then you're going to click this create new button up here in the upper right hand corner. So once you click that button, it's going to bring you to a page that looks just like this. So you can see this is the data source. You want to name the data source first. So did work stop. That's my data source right now. And then I'm going to put the options that I want to show up below that data source name. So I want yes and no to show up. So I click add, I put in the word yes, and then I click save, or I click off of that, it'll automatically save, and then you can put another one into there. So let me show you how that works. So if I was going to put in a data source and I hit create new, did work stop, I click add. You just write in the name of what you want right here. When you click off of it, it'll populate it, and then you just go to the next one. And then you click save. And then when you're done with that, you're done with this page, so you can go ahead and back out. I do want you to see that you can come in and edit those at any time. Over here on the left-hand side, you click on the action button, you can click edit. It'll allow you to come into this and edit whatever's in here. If you want to edit the name, you just click on the name and it'll allow you to type in there and save. All right. Okay, so the next thing we're going to come into, so we just went into data sources, we're going to connect those to the elements. So I'm going to click on manage. And what I mean by elements, I'm going to show you here in just a minute. I'm going to hit create new, and then we're going to have to select the element type. So I'm going to really quickly switch back over to my PowerPoint so you can see the different element types. So we do have some option in element types. Most of them usually use the single select or the multi-select boxes. So that's where you're going to just have a drop down where you can select one in, or you can select multiple in, depending on what you're wanting them to track. We also have the option for a whole number and a decimal number for these two right here. When it says string, it means a text box, so that's located in there. You can also add a text box where they can type into it. And this, I think you say it's bowling, is a checkbox, so you'll be able to check the box right next to your options. And then we also have a date time, which usually I don't see people using because we have a date time in our system already. So that's what the elements mean at the top of the page. So for this one, I'm going to select single select. I'm going to go back and grab that data source. So I'm going to come down, find the one that I did in the very long list. Oh, I have a few of these in here, so we're just going to select one. And then you have the option of this only showing up for certain role levels. I normally leave this blank because I want everybody to be able to see it, but if you only wanted a reviewer to see this option, you could put that in there and they would only be the ones seeing it. So I'm going to leave mine blank for this one. Then you want to name the data source just like you did on the data source page. I usually name it the exact same thing so I can find it. So I would select that, I would hit save. It'll bring you back out to this page once you've saved it. And again, I'm going to click back to the feature setup page because we're done with the element. And I'm going to go into the form section. So in the form section, this is what we're going to connect to the action items. So the one I used before is called action items. And I made a form in here and I called it that. Maybe it's going to show. All right, so here's my action item form. And if I wanted to create a new one, I would just click create new, but I'm going to show you how I did this one instead. So I'm going to click the edit button next to it. So when you come in, you're going to add the form name, action item form, and I'm going to add every single element that I want to appear on the action item page for this one. So what I mean by it's not just the did this stop work or whatever, you can add other ones in there also that you want to show up for action items. This will be where you house all those. So if I click add and I click on this drop down, you can see all the different ones you can choose from that we've put in over the years. So you can select those. All right, so I didn't put one in, but it's going to make me. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Don't want it, so I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to click save. And that's how you put in a custom form so you can add those. Now what you need to do, if you did make a custom form and you want to add it to your action items, you're going to want to go back to the feature setup page. You're going to go back up here to action items and you're going to go back into types. And then you're going to find the one that you want to add it to. So if I wanted to add it to barrier to safe performance, I'm going to click on the view button, scroll down to the very bottom, and you're going to see that footer custom form. And you're going to select the one that you want to attach to it. So you can see I've already attached that action item form right there. So it'll show up now every time I put in an action item. All right, so that's how you set up those action items in here. The next thing you want to do is click on Explore Data and go down to Dashboards. I just wanted to give you a quick glance at some of the dashboards that we do have in the system, or the dashboard cards. So this one has already been set up and used, so I wanted to show you this, but I do have a tab called Action Items because this is something I want to strictly look at as action items in here. And you can see down here at the bottom of the page, we have 2 cards that I populated in here. The first one's going to be for yourself, looking at all those action items that are coming in for you or ones that you have created for somebody. They'll all be listed in here. And the great thing about this one is you can click on it. It'll take you directly to that action item, so you can either complete it or work on it and then complete it at a later date, and it won't come off here until you're done. So you can see I have a very long list of those started. It's probably time I start doing those. And then on the right hand side, I do have the action item status. So you can see how everybody's doing throughout the company. It's in progress, means they're working on them. The complete are in dark blue, and we have a lot open right now, which we need to close out. So that's what that means. You can kind of see how your company's doing. So those are 2 cards that you could use possibly for action items in there. If you don't know how to set up your dashboard, we do have a webinar that we did a little while ago that you can listen to, or you can contact your client success manager and they can walk you through how to do those. So I am going to give you back some time, but I do want to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions, you can come off mute and ask me questions. And Rachel.
Carla, I entered that link to our adaptive videos in the chat if anybody wants to reference that.
Great, thanks. Well, we'll give it a minute here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me to go back over anything.